recognize the Honorable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I think my first task is to lay on the table of this Honourable House an amendment to Government Motion Number 4, 2014-15, the Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2014. Just seeking guidance. As I lay, should I read before I lay or just lay it?
I would ask that you read it so
Okay,
that
that's fine.
members would be
So
familiar.
that we could be aware. I just wanted to
of
make
it,
sure,
and
Madam. But
we probably need the consensus of the House for the
Right.
temporary sergeant to come and assist you with laying it as well.
Okay. I'm sure the House would give leave for that to happen. And Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, just to quickly say that because this is a regulation and it's for affirmative resolution and we don't have a committee stage, is why we're having to go through this process. And if nothing more, we've discovered a new way to do things whenever it happens again, I think, I hope. Anyway, Madam Speaker, the amendment reads as follows. And be it further resolved that the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2014 be amended. A, in Regulation 11 in the new Regulations 37A4B1, Roman numeral 1, proposed for insertion in the principal regulations by deleting 3001 to and substituting up to. And B, in Regulation 11 in the new Regulation 37A4C, proposed for insertion in the principal regulations by deleting $.50, which is 50 cents, and substituting 25 cents.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Minister wish to speak to the laying of this paper?
No, Madam Chair. I'm going to, with your permission and your guidance, just have one little go at it. Thank you.
I once again recognize the Honorable Minister responsible for planning, who, before we took the luncheon break, was about ready to rise to exercise his right of reply. Since then, there's been a Novus actus intervenus in the form of an amendment to the motion, and I would ask if he would deal with that at this stage before moving on to his reply.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I certainly am not going to try to repeat what you just said. I promise you. I know where my limitations are. But what the procedure calls for is, and as I read, Madam Speaker, the amendments that I just tabled, what I want to do, if with your permission, is to read the government motion number 4 as it would now read with those two very minor amendments.
Honorable Minister, if you would just move the amendment
Amendments first.
so I can
Yes.
put the question on that, and
Yes.
then yes.
Yes. Madam Speaker, as I have laid the amendments on the table and the motion, the proposed motion as amended has been circulated, I beg to move the amendment to Government Motion Number 4 of 2014-15.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Minister wish to speak to his amendment?
No, Madam Speaker. As I said, with your permission, I'd just like to have one go of it because the two amendments are very, very minor.
Could I just ask, Honorable, sorry.
Forgive me. When I move it, I should read it. So I will now read it. Thank you. The motion Madam Speaker, as amended, will read, whereas Section 42(1) of the Development and Planning Law 2011 revision provides that the Cabinet may make regulations, and whereas Section 42(3) of the said law provides that no regulations shall be made pursuant to the said law unless a draft thereof has been laid before the Legislative Assembly and a resolution approving the draft has been passed by the Legislative Assembly. And whereas the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2014 were laid on the table during a sitting of the Legislative Assembly, and whereas subsequent to the laying of the draft regulations, additional amendments have been proposed, be it therefore resolved that the draft Development and Planning Amendment Regulations 2014 as amended be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with the provisions of Section 42(3) of the Development and Planning Law 2011 revision. And Madam Speaker, with your permission, just for clarity, the actual amendment from what I just read is just the whereas section speaking to subsequent to the laying of the draft regulation, additional amendments had been proposed. That's the first amendment of the motion itself. And then in the resolve section, the words as amended have been added to the motion itself.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. If you would just oblige the House by starting by in accordance with the provision of, for the record.
I was just trying to move it along, Madam Speaker, but for clarity, in accordance with yes, Madam Speaker. In accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 25(1), I, the Honourable Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, seek leave of your good self in accordance with Standing Order 25(2) to move the following amendment to Government Motion Number 4, 2014-15 as follows. And those two amendments that I just mentioned are A, to insert a new whereas section to Government Motion Number 4, 2014-15 to read as follows. And whereas subsequent to the laying of the draft regulations, additional amendments have been proposed and laid on the table of the Legislative Assembly, and B, to insert the words as amended after Regulations 2014 in the resolve section.
Amendment has been duly moved. Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak to the amendment?
Again, Madam Speaker, unless I have to, I would just like to make one go of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak to the amendment? Does any other member wish to speak to the amendment? Final call. Does any other member, the member from Easton?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was trying to get my bearings with this to see where the minister's going. I know he spoke to me briefly about it. And because I had asked that the government look at, in my contribution, look at the removal of Section C of the 50 cents per square foot in Area C, which is the general areas of, designated as the general areas of Cayman, that is the residential areas, which includes all the districts, the district propers, the proper of most of the districts. And it appears like the government has decided to reduce that to 25 cents. Still a little more than I wanted there, but Madam Speaker, you know, I hear they're promoting the Cayman Thanksgiving now, so I guess we'll have to give thanks for small mercies. And it is small, I must say, but I guess it's better than the 50 cents, half of what it was. Now, Madam Speaker, there were some other ones that I had spoke of, and I trust that the minister will give us those, but let me just say thanks to the minister for listening to my cry and by responding and reducing the infrastructure fee for my constituency in particular by 50%. We would have liked it reduced by 100, but 50 is better than none. And I trust that the next time we come back to this honorable house, something will be impressed upon the government to reduce that even more. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak to the amendment? If not, I'll put the question that the following amendment be made to Government Motion 4 of 2014-15 as follows: to insert a new clause whereas section of Government Motion 2014-2015 to read as follows: A, and whereas subsequent to the laying of the draft regulations, additional amendments have been proposed and laid on the Legislative Assembly, and B, to insert the words as amended after regulations 2014 in the resolve section. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the amendment have been passed. Now I'll call upon the Honourable Minister to continue his reply on the motion as amended.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much, and just to make sure now, I am winding up everything now. Thank you. Madam Speaker, let me first of all very quickly say a big thank you to yourself and the Honourable Attorney General and Madam Clerk and also the technical team, my technical team, and the Deputy Clerk, and also Ms. Myrtle Brandt from the Legal Drafting Office for all of the help in getting these two small amendments done. We certainly didn't want to have two bites at the cherry, so I do apologize to the members of the House for the delay, but I think we were charting some new territory here, so again, just a special thanks. Madam Speaker, the two amendments that have just been approved, just to put them to bed very swiftly, we originally proposed for Area C to have a 50 cent per square foot infrastructure fee, and in looking at it and listening to a member from East End, a member from North Side, and also not on the microphone on the floor of the House, but listening to other colleagues, we are content, understanding that we have to have some fee to try to cover, if nothing more than administrative costs with these applications. We are content to let that be 25 cents instead of 50 cents, and at least the government will recoup some of the cost. The other section, actually, we're in Area B, the infrastructure fee, we only noticed it when brought to our attention by the member from East End. that there was no charge at all for houses under 3,000 square feet. So that was an oversight from when the original amendments had been done to the regulations some time back. And what we've simply proposed and has been accepted is where it says from 3,001 square feet up to 4,000, we'll simply delete the 3,001 square feet and it will simply say up to 4,000 square feet, which means whatever square footage area for an application for a home from any size up to 4,000 square feet will be that charge. So that's the change to that. We all have that sorted out. Madam Speaker, very, very swiftly, and I'm doing the discussion in chronological order. The member from East End, in speaking, was asking about the amendment in section 2E, when there was a definition being put in for the word permit. And he was pointing out that in the building code regulations 2013, he found no word permit in that. No definition for the word permit in that. The fact is that the building code itself has usage of the word and the definition. So when we speak to the 2013 revision with the regulations, that also encompasses the actual huge document, which is the building code itself, and that has it in it. But to speak to the legal terminology, we have to use the building code regulations 2013 revision, which encompass the building code itself. So and it exactly so. That is why, but that is why when we speak to the building code and when we speak to the forms that are used in the Department of Planning, that's where you get the different ones. If we left the law how it was, it would only speak to one permit. This way, we're allowed to use the word permit for all the various stages of the development, so that you can have a permit for a foundation and you don't just get one permit which is supposed to do everything. So you can have it for various stages, because many applications don't come in for the whole shebang one time. You get an application in for certain sections. Madam Speaker, there's also the discussion that keeps coming forward with the amendment we've made to the regulations, which, at least for planning purposes, gives some clarity to high water mark and where setbacks have to be taken from. And that amendment calls for a plan which has been approved by Lands and Survey and authenticated by them, that is no longer than 6 months old prior to the application that is put in. And the member from East End has touted that that does not go far enough from the point of view that an actual definition for the high water mark is something that we need to be looking at. And I have to tell you, Madam Speaker, this saga, and as he alluded to, I can remember when we were on the Central Planning Authority in the 80s, going back as long as that, there was constant debate of where the high water mark should be. And I have had extensive discussions, not only with the department, but also with Lands and Survey. And I'm not so sure that I have, sorry, that I can stand here and tell you that I have an answer yet. It is something that we're constantly looking at. And I guess, Madam Speaker, if nearly 30 years we haven't found it, I don't know what to say up to this point. And I don't make light of it because it causes many problems. It causes landowners to take advantage of moving tides and sand and extending their waterfront properties, the boundaries when they choose the right time to get a survey done. And then 6 months later, when you look at the survey peg, it's out in the water 15, 20, or sometimes 30 feet, and they're still claiming that that's their boundary. So I know the difficulty, and it's something, what we've proposed here is not a cure-all, but it certainly makes it easier for the department and the CPA to look at when an application comes in, and we will continue to look at that. It's just one of those things that there is not an easy answer for. Madam Speaker, there was also the question raised about when we have the setbacks for a canal, because there is no high water mark for a canal, there's just a boundary. And when we are speaking to the canal and we say that there's a 20-foot setback, the point was brought about what happens to a boathouse or anything of that nature. And I think the member from East End was saying that he didn't see anywhere that allowed for the variance procedures. And Section 8, subsection 11 in the regulations allows for those variance procedures to take place. This setback is for any main structures. And it's very difficult to word it to have encompass all of the things that we're talking about. That is why the CPA has the ability and the authority to employ these variance procedures. And if somebody makes an application and the CPA knows that it's a boathouse and the boathouse is closer than the 20 feet, nobody's going to argue. And I mean, just like a dock in the canal or whatever. So I am certain that this does not create any difficulty for people who own canal lots and want to build their homes and whatever other ancillary structures that have to be built. There is no difficulty, otherwise we would have known of that by now with all the complaints that we would have had. And I think it works fine. Madam Speaker, the member from East End also asked where there was the two sections deleted, which spoke to how many houses per acre, and I used the example, but what he asked about then was if there is nothing in the regulations which specifically refers to that, how then do you regulate it, was the question. The fact of the matter is that we do have setbacks, front setbacks, side setbacks, rear setbacks, and there's also specific in regulations, the site coverage that's allowed, and there are also requirements that are specific to the building code. And the Central Planning Authority and the department are quite satisfied that when all of the conditions of the setbacks and the site coverage and the code requirements are met, that they then don't have to even worry to say, well, if you have, let's say for instance, if you have, and I'm hypothetical here, but if you have 13,500 square feet, or whatever the amount is that's required today, 12,500 or whatever, and you can build a duplex on it, and somebody builds a duplex on that, they meet all the setbacks that are required, they meet all of the density requirements, and they meet all the code regulations, then the CPA is not really concerned, or the department for that matter, is not really concerned at that point in time whether each side of the duplex is a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, or for that matter, a 4-bedroom. So that is not a major concern once all of the other setbacks and all of the other requirements are met. And hence, because as it read in the regulations now, they just didn't match up. So there was always a question by the CPA, this is what your minimum square footage is for such a density, and this is what you can build on it. But if it says 4 houses per acre, and you actually work it out and it's 4.35 per acre, how do you build 4.35 houses? And that's the only reason. So while I hear what the member is asking, the answer lies in all of the other requirements that they have to meet. And then, Madam Speaker, the word contiguous. The member brought the point out, and the way I understood it was that he didn't think that there were many parcels that would come up to 40 acres, which would be on both sides of the road. And Madam Speaker, just to say that the principle of this idea has no bearing on where it is, but it was just thought by the technical team that if a person has 40 acres of land and it is really on both sides of the road, that, I mean, even in the district of Northside, you have fairly large parcels which roads that have been built have divided those parcels in two. And if you add 3 or 4 of those parcels up, the beach side may not be very large, but what goes out on the road side of it are fairly large tracts. So the thought was purely not to limit anyone who had property of that nature or who wanted to purchase and amalgamate property of that nature to develop, to not be able to do so. And that's purely what it's all about. Madam Chair, there's a famous, well, I say famous between us, the famous Section 26, which in Section 11, subsection 4 of the amendment, where it speaks to a person to whom planning permission for development is granted pursuant to an application made on or after the date of commencement of Section 26 of the Development and Planning Amendment Law 2014 shall contribute to the infrastructure fund as follows. What really happened, Madam Speaker, with this, why this refers to as 26 is the end product of the amendments which were approved in the last meeting of the House to the Development and Planning Law, when all of the sections were renumbered. Section 26 is the new number which refers to this. Although prior to that very last document being completed and all of the amendments put in, including all of the committee stage amendments, which were numerous if we remember, that section 26 was a totally different number in what was proposed, but by the renumbering, we ended up with that. So I think the member understands fully how we have arrived at the 26. I've gone through the other two amendments, Madam Speaker, and I don't profess that I've remembered everything. I've tried to cover as much. There is one more point which I want to just quickly speak to, and it's the business of the rights, the beach, the rights of way to the beach, 6-foot rights of way to the beach, and doing an amendment to the regulations which would allow the Central Planning Authority to be able to decide, given the circumstances, whether they would wish for those rights of way to be relocated if it was better suited and if they thought the public would receive better benefit of it. Some questions have been raised and scenarios pointed out to us which, if we simply limit the thought to those scenarios, we can see difficulty. But of course, those scenarios would only be some scenarios of various other scenarios. But so what I want to say to members who may have questions about this is, at this point in time, I don't have a solution to do otherwise, but I give the commitment that we will have a long and hard look at this to make sure that there is no inclination or possibility of disenfranchising the people in any form or fashion, because it is not meant to do that by any means. And certainly I will report back with whatever we come up with in that regard. I believe that covers most of the important points that were raised today, Madam Speaker, and I once again apologize to the House for the length of time taken, but at least I think we'll get a better result having made the amendments that we were allowed to make, and I want to thank you once again. I commend the amending regulations to this Honorable Legislative Assembly, and once there is safe passage, we will move forward with the procedure which is called for in order to enact these regulations. And I will look at the points raised that I've spoken to, that we will see again if in the very near future we need to bring any more amendments after strong deliberations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that be it therefore resolved that the draft development and planning amendment regulations 2014 as amended be approved by the Legislative Assembly in accordance with the provisions of Section 42.3 of the Development and Planning Law 2011 revision. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, motion for 2014-2015 is duly passed.
Bills, first readings. The second-hand dealers bill 2014.
The bill has been deemed to have been read the first time and is set down for the second reading.
The trade and business licensing bill 2014.
The bill has been deemed to have been read the first time and is set down for the second reading.
The summer jurisdiction amendment bill 2014.
The bill has been deemed to have been read for the first time and is now set down for the second reading. Recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I move the adjournment of this Honorable House, I'd just like to give members an indication of the way the government is thinking about dealing with the balance of the matters that we have before this House. We've just done the first reading of the 3 bills that the government proposes to deal with in this meeting. They are, I believe, eight questions, and there are 5 private members' motions. A significant number of the government bench will need to travel next week. And so what we are going to propose is that we try to get through the government business today, tomorrow, and the balance of the government business tomorrow and Friday. And tomorrow we'll be able to answer, I think there are 3 questions the answers are ready for. So we will deal with those. There are, I think, 24 or more reports that have to be laid. And then we would want to suspend the relevant standing orders so that government business could take precedence tomorrow. We get through the government bills. We adjourn the House. I won't be here because I have to leave at midday on Friday, but the House will continue. And we propose then to adjourn the House on Friday evening and to resume not the following Monday, but the Monday after that. So it would be, I think, like the 15th. I think I'm right, Madam Speaker. I'm saying that we wouldn't resume the Monday. Was it? Yes, we would resume Monday the 8th. I'm wrong. Take it back. Monday the 8th. Monday the 8th. And deal, then we'd have just the private members' motions to deal with exclusively, assuming, because I'm assuming we will get through the government business in those 2 days.
Speaker,
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I would want to support the government in getting through their business, but there are some important private members' motions. As important as any of those bills that is on the order paper. And what I want and try to be agreeable, I'm not akin to showing aside our business for another 15 days or more, or whatever it is. Well, I understand that, but as I said, summary jurisdiction bill, which deals with justice of the peace, and these are the draconian laws that I see coming, are important to the government, but private members' business is most important to us as well. So I want the government to bear that in mind.
Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Duly noted. Madam Speaker, I move the adjournment of this Honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
The question is that this Honorable House be adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, the ayes have it, but I did not at that time catch the eye of the opposition, although he did speak to me about raising a matter on the adjournment, and I gave the approval, so I'd ask if you would so do.
Madam Speaker, I rise to make an inquiry from the minister who has responsibility for the port as to what is the situation at the Georgetown port. Madam Speaker, I've always said that the islands have 2 main lifelines, the port and Cayman Airways. It is of national importance. Madam Speaker, people from all walks of life, business people, the man on the street, civil servants, and others have contacted me as to recent reports of changes in staff sooner or later, and particularly so in management. This gives for serious cause for concern. More so, it's been a week since these reports and nothing has been said by the minister responsible, nor by the Port Authority Board to clear the air or to put the people's mind to ease on what is the situation at the port. Certainly, as opposition leader, it is my constitutional duty to make this inquiry and to solicit from the minister what is the position to date. As I said, Madam Speaker, we have 2 lifelines. The port is a major and significant partner in the national life of these islands. Uncertainty in the lives of those who must operate our port and have done and are doing a very good job there, and those who operate the businesses through it cannot be left dangling without the staff and the country having a solid understanding and knowledge of what to expect. So I'm soliciting a response from the minister on what we all can expect. And if the minister can't do that at this time, Madam Speaker, I understand and give way for that. But I certainly would hope that by tomorrow morning, the minister would be able to give some sort of indication as to what the situation is. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Deputy Premier, do you wish to take his invitation to respond tomorrow morning, or you wish to respond under Standing Order 11.6?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just looking to see if I have available some correspondence, and if I have that, I'm quite happy to answer it tonight.
Standing Order, give you 20 minutes. Okay.
These concerned members of the port staff requested that ministers investigate a malicious rumor that was upsetting the entire port staff. The harmful rumor stated that the members of the Port Authority, Cayman Islands, recently approved a resolution. Port Authority, I'm assuming this is the board, resolution to terminate all port staff. In addition, whomever wanted to retain their old jobs will have to reapply under new terms and conditions. However, this reapplication process comes with a caveat that no current port staff will be guaranteed any job or position upon reapplication. Categorically state without fear of contradiction that the above has no basis in truth whatsoever. As for the creation of such a harmful rumor, and having had time to review its negative effects, said rumor was obviously designed in such a manner as to disrupt our entire organization. Consequently, such acts will not go unchecked and are addressed accordingly. Madam Speaker, I strongly recommend that the individuals whom have started and are perpetuated this mischievous rumor can be found guilty of misconduct and terminated to pursuant Section 52(1)A of the Labor Law 2011 revision. Therefore, I respectfully suggest that any such utterances of untruth cease. In addition, the action outlined above, I further suggest that individuals responsible contact myself, or any other member of the authority with apology and reason why you decided to create such a rumor. I thank you for attention and consideration of this matter. And that was from the board.
I understand.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I understand that letter, which seems to be coming from a person in its body, but it was stated it's coming from the Board of Directors. But in the body, if you hear how it's stated, it sounds like coming from an individual. Besides the point, Madam Speaker, I still haven't heard from the Minister in regards to what and if management have been given any kind of letters, understanding. What is the situation? Is there going to be changes? That's what I want to find out. That's basically it.
Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that this was very clear that the rumors and the statements were untrue, and there would not be any members released from the Port Authority. I'm not sure how else that can be answered.
No, because
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I would hope that
I'll
as Minister...
allow the final intervention as it's on adjournment.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I would suggest to the Minister that he himself, because the Ministers don't sit on the board, and that's why I framed what I'm saying the way I said it, and he might not know, but I would suggest to the Minister that he contact staff himself to find out whether anybody has been given and what is the situation in regards to laying off or firing or whatever the terminology you want to put it, of important management at the port. Madam Speaker, thanks for your indulgence.
Honourable Deputy Premier, you wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm quite happy to do that. I'll investigate it. Thank you.
The House now stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.